Hey man, I'm Cog. We're gonna get out of here and listen to an episode of Watch, Review, Repeat. Wanna come? Welcome to Watch, Review, Repeat. This is the podcast where two best friends discuss the latest in film and television and then do it all over again the following week. My name is Colton Brown. Joining me is Andrew Meadows. Andrew, how have you been this past week?
I've been pretty good, man. I've been pretty good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. It's finally here. Thor Ragnarok has finally arrived into theaters, and we have seen it, haven't we?
We have. We actually went and saw it in IMAX, and I fell asleep, not to the detriment of the movie. We just caught a late show time, and then I caught it again today. So I'm well versed on the Ragnarok. I'm quite happy to see it two times. So
yes, it's worth noting that I also saw it twice, but I saw it in full both times. You know, your whole excuse about a late show time doesn't fly with me, given that I was up since 4:30 in the morning on the night that we saw it. So. Just letting you know, I'm not buying your flimsy excuses, all right?
You've always been much more apt to stay up much later than I have, anyways. I'm used to an old man's schedule.
All right, I'll give you that. All right, so let's cover the latest news for this week. We're going to start in the world of film, and we're going to start with a very, very familiar topic that is near and dear to our hearts, Star Wars The Last Jedi, which got a TV spot that aired during the World Series called the Awake TV spot. So we got a little bit of new footage in here interspliced with some footage that we've seen from a couple of the past trailers that have been released. And I don't really know what else to add other than, it still looks good, doesn't it?
Oh my God, man. It does an excellent job, the new footage does, of continuing to set a tone that the movie presumably is going to have. You know, it just looks increasingly more dark. It looks like it's going to be a really heavy movie. And the score is just, I don't know. I think the score is going to be great in this movie. There's one scene in this TV spot in particular where Mark Hamill or Luke walks into the Millennium Falcon and then all the lights boot up and everything else, and it just looks so good, man. I'm very excited. Very excited. How do you feel about it? Are you excited about it?
Just a little bit, yeah. You could put me in the excited camp. I guess that would probably be a fair statement to make.
It also looks like there's going to, not to cut you off or anything, but it looks like there's going to be a lot more space combat in this movie as well. You catch a couple of glimpses of Poe Dameron himself and flying around and whatnot in space, and it looks really cool.
It does look pretty awesome, and I do want to kind of let our listeners know that I don't know if I speak for you on this, but I think I'm going to try to shy away from a lot of the marketing material as it kind of ramps up as we get closer to the release. So we're just a little over a month away, and I fully expect them to start dropping TV spots pretty much every day eventually. So I'm at the point right now where, I've seen what I need to see. I don't need to be convinced about this movie, and I don't need to have anything else really spoiled for me. I'd like to kind of walk in seeing what I've seen and then have the gaps filled in by the actual movie itself,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm all in, no matter what they give us.
Yeah, we don't need to be convinced, like I said, so... Yeah, moving on. Kind of elsewhere in the Disney world, we got a voice cast that was fully announced for The Lion King, which is, I guess, a quote-unquote live-action adaptation of The Lion King. It's going to be fully CG rendered, but I guess in a realistic style, much in the way that The Jungle Book was filmed, and is actually coming from the same director that did The Jungle Book back in 2016, Jon Favreau. So... amongst the names in this cast, Donald Glover will be playing Simba, and some of these have already been announced, so I think this is just kind of rounding out, kind of the principal characters and cast that we're going to be seeing in this movie. So after Donald Glover, we've learned that Beyonce will be playing Nala. James Earl Jones, reprising his role as Mufasa from the original hand-drawn animated one. Chiwetel Ejiofor playing the big bad Scar, and then... everyone else, I don't need to get too crazy and in depth with who everyone is and who's doing what, but some other names that people might recognize that are going to be part of this cast: Alfred Woodard, John Oliver, John Connie, Seth Rogen, Billy Eichner, Eric Andre,
Yeah, Eric Andre, dude.
Florence Kasumba, Keegan-Michael Key, J.D. McCrary, and Shahadi Wright Joseph. So pretty impressive talent on board.
Fucking Eric Andre.
and some oddball choices, certainly. John Oliver and Eric Andre, probably not two names that immediately spring to mind when you think about a voice cast for a Disney film, but I imagine they're going to do a pretty amazing job. I hopefully they don't take me out of the movie too much if I just immediately key into who they're playing.
I think Eric Andre playing a hyena is awesome. This cast is really studded, man. I'm pretty hyped about this. John's doing it too. John Favreau.
He is, yeah. I mean, the Jungle Book, I thought was a pretty good adaptation. Jungle Book's not necessarily one of my favorite Disney films of all time, but I thought that they did a pretty good job, and visually speaking, technically speaking, it was a marvel to behold. And so, I guess I fully understand why they would greenlight doing The Lion King, because you're taking probably one of the biggest Disney properties you can think of and giving it this new shine to it. I think this is going to do gangbusters at the box office, let's put it that way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the person who did the original screenplay is also helping writing it and everything else. So I think it's probably gonna move in strides. It's got quite the cast and quite the talent behind the movie.
It does. So we talked about this project last week, and that Zachary Levi has been cast as Captain Marvel in the Shazam movie that the DC and Warner Brothers are putting together. And we got a couple more casting announcements this week to kind of follow on to that. So Mark Strong, who we saw recently in Kingsman, Golden Circle, is going to be joining the cast as the villain. Which is an interesting pick because he actually has already played a DC villain in Sinestro back in that fantastic 2011 Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds.
I don't recall.
What? How could you not remember that very memorable and very excellent movie? I'm offended. I am offended, sir.
Yeah, so if he played him, all right, cool.
I guess I should probably point out the fact that he did not technically play the villain in that movie. He played Sinestro, who at the time in that movie was a member of the Green Lantern Corps, and then we see in a mid-credit sequence that he gets corrupted by the yellow the yellow ring to become part of the Yellow Lantern Corps. An obvious sequel bait for a movie that never got a sequel and immediately prompted a reboot of the DC universe. And
I think Mark Strong's pretty fucking cool, though. I like Mark Strong.
Yeah, Mark Strong is awesome. He's a great actor. What else has he been in? I'm trying to think some other good Mark Strong roles.
Sherlock Holmes. We did catch him in Kick-Ass. Kick-Ass was really good. I liked Kick-Ass.
Yeah, shame about the sequel, though.
I never caught the sequel. I guess I should just avoid it.
Yeah, maybe stay away.
Most notably, he was in Babylon AD, though. That's the one with Vin Diesel. Did you ever catch that movie?
Yeah, I did not catch that one, no.
You can avoid that one.
I'm sure it's fantastic. If it's got Vin Diesel in it, then I'm there.
During Thor Ragnarok today, I caught a really interesting trailer, on a side note, starring one of my favorite actors, Gerard Butler, and 50 Cent. And I'm not quite sure what the movie's called. I'll have to look it up real quick. It is called Den of Thieves. And I think I want to cover this movie. It comes out January 19th.
I was thinking that January 19th sounds like a really good day for me to take a vacation, so maybe I'll let you handle it solo, and then I'll kind of let you, do all the hard work and everything, and then I'll just enjoy a nice vacation, Gerard Butler free. How does that sound?
I don't know, man. I could appreciate some help. I think this is a movie that we both can appreciate.
I mean, we didn't even see Geostorm, though, so clearly you're not that big of a Gerard Butler fan.
In my defense, I tried to see Geostorm. You said, I'm not going to go see Geostorm. I said, I want to see Geostorm. I want to see it. I think I said that.
I want to see the receipts on that.
Oh, I digress.
Yes, back on track. Mark Strong in Shazam. Also in Shazam, Grace Fulton, who is an actress that I've never seen in the movie, but she starred in Annabelle Creation earlier this year, which is the last work that David F. Sandberg worked on, and he is the director on Shazam, so clearly there's some sort of connection there, and one would presume that they enjoyed working together enough to the point where, he's keen on bringing her back for this movie, so says she's just going to be playing a friend of Billy Batson, who is the child who can transform into Captain Marvel or Shazam. So that's cool. Cast seems to be rounding out. Sounds like production's starting to gear up on this. So I think that if they kind of strike the right tone with this, then I think that it could be a pretty fun project to follow. So I'm curious to see how it'll go. I say we're obviously in the very early stages with it. So
something that I think that we'll definitely be covering in the future.
Yeah. Well, we got a ways off. This is April 2019 is what its current release date is set for. So something that has it's been in shape for quite some time is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, of which Thor Ragnarok is a part of. So Thor Ragnarok this weekend collected a cool $121 million.
Ooh, buddy,
is what I believe the latest figure is, and then that could see an uptick potentially when the actuals come in. Well, they'll be in by the time this episode's released, but we're working on the estimates that they have for the weekend. So easily the biggest launch for the Thor franchise by a considerable margin, and definitely one of the higher grosses overall for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But it's pretty astonishing in the sense that it's now bumped the total domestic gross for the Marvel Cinematic Universe to over $5 billion. That is B. That is 9 zeros.
Disney, man.
And again, that's domestically, so we're talking North America alone here, and that is just an absolutely insane figure. And now that's across 17 movies, so clearly there's a lot of movies that have come out since 2008's Iron Man, but that is just, that's an absurd amount of money.
And that's only box office, right? That's not anything else.
Exactly. That's purely box office. We don't need to talk about how much money Disney's making off of the merchandising and everything else that comes with making a movie and making franchises kind of this nature. So we already knew Disney wasn't hurting for cash, but this is just why. Just for comparison's sake, Star Wars is probably the next up in terms of overall franchise grosses at $3.3 billion, which is arguably more impressive in the sense that I think we've had, to this point, 9 theatrical releases overall. The 7 mainline, Rogue One, and then technically there was a Clone Wars film that was theatrically released, but that contributed probably about 0.01% of that $3.3 billion in terms of box office revenue. But, that's effectively half the movies, and it's well on its way. The Last Jedi is going to do a ridiculous amount of money, perhaps not as much as The Force Awakens did, and its domestic run, but still crazy amounts of money.
And it all goes to Disney.
Exactly.
All goes back to Disney.
Yeah, it seems like all the other studios are just kind of scratching their heads, trying to figure out, what do I got to do to get a piece of that?
And they're not bad movies. They're so good. And I don't know what it is, but their formula is just fucking fine-tuned, man, because everything they put out is just it's just really good. And maybe I'm a couple beers deep in this very potent beer, but I think that you take a look at every animated Disney movie, it's outstanding. You take a look at Marvel Studios hasn't put out a bad movie in quite some time. And then you look at of course Lucasfilm. Man, fucking Disney, dude. Now what's they own another production house, don't they, or multiple ones?
Yeah, they've got I think Buena Vista. They've got a couple more
they own Pixar, they own ABC. What's their profit?
If I were a betting man, I'd say it's probably a lot.
$15.26 billion a year in revenue.
We look at what they have. It's not surprising. It isn't, but it is quite astonishing. But anyway, moving on. Our next bit of news, and this is kind of moving over to the television side of the house. This piece of news is not a good one. So this past week, I know we've been dealing with a lot of the fallout from the Harvey Weinstein allegations that we talked about a few weeks back on one of our episodes. And we've had a lot of people, a lot of actors, actresses come out and publicly make allegations of sexual harassment, sexual assault. And so this week we got another allegation against a very high-profile Hollywood actor.
Kevin fucking Spacey.
Yeah, so Kevin Spacey was publicly accused by actor Anthony Rapp, who was original Broadway member of Rent. He's actually in Star Trek Discovery right now. He came out and publicly accused Kevin Spacey of making a sexual advance toward him when Anthony Rapp himself was 14 years old. he has a lot more detailed description of his encounter that anyone can find on the internet and take a look at if they want to know a little bit more details on it. I don't feel the need to elaborate on it. I kind of feel that headline speaks for itself. And since then, we've had at least 8 more people come out and say that this has happened to them too. Counts are ranging from harassment to attempted rape. And, it really hits home when you think about an actor like this who you've admired and respected for many years. And to hear something like this come out, it's shocking. And, well, let's just say the way he handled it hasn't been particularly graceful. So in the wake of this allegation by Rapp, Kevin Spacey made a statement on Twitter saying that he doesn't remember the counter that Rapp describes, but if he did behave the way that he described it, then he owes him a sincerest apology for what have been inappropriate drunken behavior.
And by the way, I'm gay.
And by the way, I also happen to be gay. This seems like a good time for me to come out to the world as a gay man.
It's a poor attempt at deflection.
Right. And I think it's a very bad look in the sense that, these topics somehow are related. I'm going to put them in the same statement. It's so tone deaf, and it's appalling.
I think you brought it up good this weekend because we touched on it briefly this weekend, and innocent until proven guilty, I think is what you said, but at the same time, your statement, you're given an opportunity to say something to defend yourself, and when your opportunity to defend yourself is taken and you choose to try to deflect with, hey, I'm going to come out and I'm gay, it just doesn't work. It's like you said, it's tone deaf.
Yeah, well, small correction to your point. I said innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. That doesn't apply to the court of public opinion.
That's true.
I think you have to kind of realize that those are two kind of separate things in the sense that, maybe he may not be criminally charged for something like this, but certainly one person comes out and is followed by a string of 8 other people at least coming out and saying the same thing. It's a combination of things. It's a pattern of behavior.
There's probably a very good likelihood that he did these things.
Sure, and moreover, at least there have been consequences for his actions.
Kudos to Netflix.
Yeah, in particular, Netflix has effectively fired Kevin Spacey from House of Cards.
They've canceled the show after the 6th season, right?
Yeah, there was conflicting reports on whether they were already going to cancel the show after the 6th season, but they've now kind of basically come to a point where they're going to have to heavily restructure the 6th season and then sunset the show after that. So they're doing it without Kevin Spacey's involvement, which for a show that's been about his character as its principal character, that's going to require a lot of creative reshuffling to figure out. I'm not sure that another season is really warranted, but I can understand the argument that some folks have made is that, there's a lot of people working on that show beyond Kevin Spacey, so it may be unfair to basically put a lot of those people out of jobs because one disgusting person committed these acts and has now jeopardized their livelihoods. So yeah, Kevin Spacey is a huge piece of shit. That's kind of the bottom line, I think, for the news this week.
God damn it.
It hurts to hear about, again, actors that you kind of think highly of, but at the same time, you got to flush all these people out of Hollywood. You got to flush all these people out of society. And clearly, there's been a rampant issue in Hollywood of this nature for a long time. That's probably still present today. But this response and the backlash, it's all warranted. And I think that's kind of what needs to be done to at least make some sort of overtures towards addressing the issues and addressing these things. So anyway, moving on to our last bit of news for the week. Amazon Studios is currently in talks with the Tolkien estate to develop a television series based on Lord of the Rings. I would say, personally, I'm not sure that there's a need for a television series of The Lord of the Rings, given that I think that Peter Jackson's trilogy still holds up to this day. But I think that this is probably something that I think everyone's looking for their Game of Thrones, to find this big epic fantasy series that just takes the world by storm. I mean, I can't think of any television series right now that really compares to the fervor that comes with Game of Thrones. And so, understandably, I think a lot of networks and studios are trying to find that one thing. And so there's certainly an argument to be made to spend some money on an established IP that people are already very familiar with, instead of dropping a ridiculous amount of money on an IP that people aren't familiar with and hoping that it can kind of catch fire the way that Game of Thrones did, but certainly you'd be taking a big financial risk if it just happens to not work out that way, which, I mean, just looking at Game of Thrones, I think we knew about A Song of Ice and Fire, this series of novels, prior to the show's existence, but I would say the world at large perhaps was mostly unfamiliar. So I think, it wasn't, I don't think it was a case of HBO greenlights a series based on it thinking this is going to be one of the biggest shows of all time. I don't think that was ever really any realistic expectation, at least not from an outside looking in perspective. So I think that's probably the headspace for Amazon in terms of let's throw some serious cash at a major IP and kind of make that potentially the flagship for Amazon Studios. And Amazon's been making a ton of shows in the past few years. But I think this is this is probably going to be a cut above in terms of not only the money they'd be spending to secure the licenses, but also in the money that they'd be spending to produce it, because, those films, even in the early 2000s, were not cheap endeavors to make.
No, definitely not. I don't know. I don't necessarily need, I'll certainly take it if it's there, and I already subscribed to it, so I'll fucking watch it, but I don't necessarily need it. And like you said, I would certainly take if they threw the kind of money that they're going to throw at Lord of the Rings, if they threw it at a different IP and something new and fresh, it would definitely be a lot more interesting. More so than my response to Lord of the Rings, whereas, yeah, I enjoy that shit. I'll definitely watch it, but then again, it's just more of the same. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
It's like you said. I would still watch this. I don't know that I need it. I'm not asking for it, I guess. I would like to see some other big series get adapted. I think something like the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson could be pretty awesome if adapted, but there's also a danger in adapting something like that hasn't been finished as a series.
The same argument can be made about Game of Thrones, though, you know what I mean?
Well, I would imagine that HBO was probably working under the assumption that Martin knew how to write books these days, so that he would get 2 books out in a span of 8 years. I mean, maybe it's not that he doesn't know how to write books, it's that he just gets bored with it. So I don't think HBO really anticipated that being the case when they greenlit Game of Thrones, given how long ago that was. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, if this comes to fruition from Amazon Studios, I'll be there to check it out. But hopefully we do get a chance to see some other big series get some adaptations of their own as well. I think that would be pretty cool. All right, is it time for the end of all things?
It's time for Ragnarok.
Let's do it. Thor Ragnarok. Coming to us from director Taika Waititi, we find Thor in a gladiatorial contest against a friend from work, who he has to fight to survive and prevent the end of all things at the hands of Hela, the goddess of death. So, Andrew, tell me what you thought about Thor Ragnarok.
I would say that Thor Ragnarok was a impressive movie. I think it was very well made. I think it was there's some interesting shots as far as cinematography goes. I think it makes very good use of colors and contrasts, and I think it's very comedic. It's a very funny movie. And I really enjoyed it. I just think it's a thoroughly enjoyable movie. What'd you think about it?
Well, I think you kind of hit on it. I think the first thing that really jumped out to me, and it's not terribly surprising given Taika Waititi's pedigree, and that is the humor in the movie, which is very central to it. And not that Marvel Studios hasn't used humor extensively in its past, but I feel like this is kind of the next level. Where in some ways this is kind of a comedy in its own way, and that's not to say that there aren't other aspects to it that are handled as well or anything like that, but I mean, that's the thing that jumped out to me immediately. It's a hilarious movie, and all around, it's not just, there's not one humorous character, there's no comic relief. that's designed to provide the comedy. It's just really well balanced around the cast. Everyone gives it their all in terms of, seriously performing, but also, adding their humorous touches to everything. And I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it. And then beyond that, I think it was just incredibly well done overall. A lot of the action was fantastic. As you mentioned, the cinematography was really, really impressive. The way that colors are used, as you mentioned, I mean, it's a very stunning movie, visually speaking, and Marvel's been no slouch, certainly this year with between Guardians and Spider-Man Homecoming in that respect. But I think this was very eye-popping in a way that some of their movies haven't been. Certainly neither of the other Thor movies that they've put out can even compare to the visual splendor that is contained within this movie. So that's kind of where I stand on it overall. I was really impressed with it. I mean, I saw it Thursday night, turned around and saw it Saturday night, both times in IMAX, and I'll see it a third time. I'll definitely be back for more. I think it just strikes at such a unique balance between the comedy and the action, and there's just enough heart and character and soul to all of it that it's a really good movie.
No, 100%. It's I know that we kind of shared this feeling about it whenever it was first announced. But every step of the way, with every bit of the marketing, it was just more hype. And oftentimes when you get so hyped for a movie, you're often let down whenever it comes out. But that was not the case with this movie. It's very well crafted, and it's a very stark contrast between what they're putting out, or they're being Marvel and DC. You know what I mean? They're DC's following a dark movie, whereas Marvel's following a light movie.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that DC is necessarily leaning totally dark. I think that they have up till this point, but I think the Justice League trailers have tried to blend that dark visual style with perhaps the brand of humor that Marvel has often been mentioned in the same breath with, and it kind of seems like a little bit of tonal whiplash if those trailers are an indication. Whereas I think that Marvel has their tone and the feel down pat.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Even beyond just Thor, but especially in Thor, where I think sometimes, to compare it to, say, Guardians Volume 2, I felt that sometimes the humor in Volume 2 overshadowed some of the serious aspects of the movie, sometimes to its detriment. Sometimes a little bit of levity is good. Too much levity can undermine certain things, and I thought that was the case with Volume 2 from time to time. I don't want to make it sound like I didn't love Volume 2, because I did, but if I had to peg any criticisms, that would certainly be one of them. I feel like Ragnarok was a bit more deft in terms of maybe not undercutting its serious moments as much, and certainly, again, there is levity in many, many spots, and places that are trying to maybe lighten the humor or lighten the mood a little bit. But I thought it was handled a lot more gracefully within Thor. And I thought that a lot of the humor in general was just much more naturalistic feeling. And I think that's largely owed to the cast. And I think Taika has just a very unique style that just translated to Thor. And I think that's awesome, because I think that's what makes this movie so unique, is it's taking a very New Zealand style of humor. That something like Flight of the Conchords is something that we love, but it's not really necessarily a popular style of humor. It's not something that we really see, and something that gets a $200 million budget,
right,
and every day of the week. So to see it kind of applied to this grand scale, it's a very unique blend, a very unique vision, and I think that's one that was really fully realized and fully executed with a ton of passion, a ton of love, and I think it shows from all parties involved.
It's an excellent movie.
Yeah. Some other things that I enjoyed. I'll say some specific things that I enjoyed. Some of this in the cinematography. There's just a couple things in here that particularly just really caught my eye. There's like a tracking shot of Mjolnir just kind of fighting through a horde of goons that Thor is smashed into bits. That happens early on in the movie, and I think that kind of immediately just keyed into the fact that I feel like we really haven't seen Thor kick as much ass as he should be kicking ass.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I was going to make a point about that. we all know that he ends up fighting the Hulk.
Yeah, that was kind of the big reveal of the teaser trailer. So I think if you're listening to this now, that shouldn't come as any sort of surprise.
Right. Okay. Just the way he dodges and punches and just the way he moves. He's kicking a lot of ass, man. It's really cool. You know, I think, like you said, there's in all the prior stuff, we haven't seen him kick as much ass as he should have been kicking.
He's been kicking ass. Don't get me wrong. You know,
he hasn't been kicking this much ass though. He's no god of fucking thunder.
That is definitely true. I think the amount of ass kicking here and the way that he kicks ass here, like it's something that I feel like we've been yearning for with this character for a very long time. And I ended up rewatching Thor, the first Avengers, Thor: The Dark World, and Avengers: Age of Ultron prior to watching this for the first time because I kind of wanted to revisit the Thor universe. And so it's kind of fresh in my mind a lot of, you know, his particular involvement and all the movies that he's previously been involved in within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this movie just steps up the game for Thor particularly, but I think also just across the board for a lot of old characters, making reappearances. So Hulk, I think gets fleshed out in a way that we really haven't seen a whole lot to this point, you know, to give him kind of a meaty role. And probably meatier than I think that we've really seen in both Avengers and Age of Ultron, which we got bits and pieces of his personality, but you know, it's a little bit harder when you're dealing with the leads. You're dealing with the leads of several different big tentpole movies and then throw them into one movie. You know, it's inevitable that certain characters don't get as much focus as others, and Thor was certainly a victim of that. But I also think that Hulk, in spite of him, you know, being like fantastic, everyone really loving like the Hulk action sequences that we got, you know, the end of the first Avengers, where he's just going to town in the Chitauri, the Hulk Buster fight we got in Age of Ultron. Like, we've got some cool action sequences out of the Hulk, but I feel like we haven't gotten too in depth with his characterization overall. And I think that we got a lot more Hulk, you know, and I do mean the Hulk, you know, less Banner and more Hulk in this one than we've ever gotten in the MCU so far.
And that's just it. The Hulk's always been used as an accentuation of Banner. You know what I mean? He's never really been his own character.
I agree. We've gotten plenty of Banner, but we haven't gotten much Hulk as a distinct personality.
Right. And we got a lot of that in this one. And it was great. It was very good. And I tell you what, I think they used, only because I think you did too, the Neil Gaiman audiobook on Norse mythology and everything.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got a pretty good knowledge on the way that they, not necessarily the way they quote unquote should be, but the way that they, what they're based on anyways.
Right. Well, certainly what Marvel, with Jack Kirby and company back in the day pulled from when they were creating these characters from Marvel Comics.
Right. And when you take a character like Thor, who's been established in a couple of different movies and everything else, and you put him with somebody like the Hulk, who has almost the mind of a child, and in Norse mythology, Thor is not a brainchild by any stretch of the imagination. He's a very basic person.
He's a rather dim-witted individual.
Yes. And you pair him with somebody like the Hulk, who has the mentality of almost like a child, and it almost accentuates the way that these characters are, you know. And it's I don't know, it's a really fresh take on Thor, because he was forced to deal with the Hulk and his mentality.
And I think that, you know, just from a general standpoint, they injected a bit more personality into him. I think they let Hemsworth really kind of play with the character a bit more in terms of getting away from being this stoic, I'm Asgardian, I am a god of thunder. You know, it's. I think they let him lean into his comedic chops a little bit more than they really ever have before. I mean, we've got hints of it, but never really to the extent that we see here.
And for the first time in a long time, Thor seemed like Thor.
You know, Hemsworth he's always played him well, but I've always feel like he's played him very one note, because he's always been written as very one note. And I feel like we got a couple notes added to that one note here, that let him play with the character much more freely than he's done in the past. So yeah, you know, he still is the stoic god of thunder from time to time, but then he's also just kind of a bit of the dummy that we kind of got from listening to Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology. I feel like we certainly got something that felt a lot more akin to his characterization and that than we've ever gotten out of Thor before.
Yeah, it was good. It was cool.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I think just the characters in this thing, like, I don't think there's a character in here that I didn't like. And I don't, by extension, I don't think that there was an actor that I didn't like in this. Like, everyone was great. Tom Hiddleston's back as Loki. He's always been good. I think Loki's always been the meteor part since the beginning. So I think Loki's kind of been the benefactor of if you're going to point to any one character within the Thor franchise that's really kind of taken off. It's got to be Hiddleston's Loki. I think that's just because he's always been the one with the most depth. And the first movie kind of get a bit of his backstory, and especially in the Dark World, I think we could point to a great many things in the Dark World that don't really totally work. But I would say that Thor's lack of growth in that is probably one of the biggest things, whereas Loki is kind of the only one in that has any sort of discernible, meaningful arc. And that carries forward into here, and they kind of address that, and they continue it in a pretty meaningful way, both for himself and in terms of his relationship with Thor. And I really like that, and I think Hiddleston did his usual great work here as well. But kind of moving on to some of these new characters that we saw.
The fucking Grandmaster.
Would you say that you enjoyed Jeff Goldblum's maybe performance in this movie?
Jeff Goldblum was amazing. I don't know how I've missed Jeff Goldblum, and the only movie that I can think of about Jeff Goldblum is fucking Jurassic Park.
So you two dig up dinosaurs?
You're fucking Jeff Goldblum. Let me tell you something. He plays a Grandmaster in this movie. He is hilarious. He is awesome.
He's so eccentric that I fully believe that he is one of the the oldest beings within the universe. The Grandmaster is the brother of the Collector, who we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 from Benicio del Toro, who kind of played him as this very weird character. But I feel like Jeff Goldblum's Grandmaster is
he really?
Yes, they are brothers.
I did not know that.
Yeah, but I feel like Jeff Goldblum was kind of next level of, like, his actions have been uninhibited for so long that he's just kind of turned into this weird dude, and everyone's kind of just like, wow, this guy's weird as hell, but he's just so in his own world that he's just doing everything that he wants to do. And part of me thinks that I feel like that's probably just Jeff Goldblum in person anyway. So I feel like it's just a natural fit. Like I wonder how much acting do you think Jeff Goldblum is actually doing in this movie, realistically?
I don't know, man, but I can tell you that it felt very, very organic. His performance was spectacular. Just the way he looked at other people, it just looked like you were capturing the way that this person is. And maybe that's really good acting. Maybe that's just the way he is. I don't know. But I think that the Grandmaster might be probably my favorite character of the whole show, or the whole movie.
Well, I'll tell you a character that I really enjoyed, and that was Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie.
Well, Valkyrie is pretty good too. I like Valkyrie a whole lot. Yeah,
she's fantastic. I think I've said this to you probably a few times, and I don't know if I've said it on air, so I want to say it just in case I haven't before. I'm so glad that Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige and all the higher ups there felt the same way I did about Creed, in the sense that clearly they loved it as much as I did, because they've now poached basically every major talent from it. Michael B. Jordan will be in Black Panther. Sylvester Stallone was in Guardians Volume 2. Tessa Thompson is now here in Thor Ragnarok. They poached the director, Ryan Coogler, also for Black Panther. He said, I think that they were like, holy shit, we need to get everyone here, get them to work for us. And I think that was a very good strategy, because she's fantastic in this. Her character is a ton of fun, and she's a badass. And she wasn't the only big female character that we got newly introduced to. We also got Cate Blanchett's Hela, the goddess of death.
Yeah, and I think you got a bit of a crush on Hela.
Well, I have a bit of a crush on Cate Blanchett as well. And let me preface this by saying that I have quite a few Hollywood crushes. Daisy Ridley, perhaps chief amongst them.
I like Daisy Ridley. She's a pretty nice lady.
I do not deny your accusations. Cate Blanchett, she's just such a stunning and talented actress. And I think there's like a certain upper echelon of actors that we think of that are like, well, they're not going to do a comic book movie, are they? And I don't want to speak ill of comic book movies given how much I love them and how much I love comic books, but there's always this kind of shadow over them. I think that I don't think you're going to see Daniel Day-Lewis play any superheroes anytime soon. You know what I'm saying? I think there's there's levels in Hollywood. I think that they kind of differentiate the two. So to see someone like Cate Blanchett take on a role like this and give it her all in the way that she gives all of her performances her all, like she's chewing some serious scenery here, and not in a bad way. I mean, like she's great here. She's got this very grungy look that, I mean, and again, I already have a thing for Cate Blanchett, and let's just say that this is borderline too much for me. Okay.
Just blew your mind, huh?
I'm just putting it out there, all right? You brought it up, so I have to, I gotta air it out, and I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling that way. But beyond aesthetics, I thought she was really good in this, and I thought that she was a really, really fun villain.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah, kind of last thing I want to touch on before we get in our spoiler section is Korg.
He's hilarious.
Portrayed by the director Taika Waititi himself. He's a Cronin who's a big rock monster thing, and oh my god, he's hilarious. Everything that comes out of his mouth, he's got this New Zealand accent that kind of contrasts his rugged exterior, but I feel like every line of dialogue was just improvised on the spot, and it's all comedy gold. I talked extensively about the humor in this movie, and Korg is a very, very large part of that in terms of just, I feel like I'm going to be quoting Korg until my end of days, personally.
It's so good.
He was great, and a standout for me, and I think he's going to be a fan favorite, and I sincerely hope we also see some more Korg in the future. So that's kind of how I felt about Thor Ragnarok, about the movie itself, the characters and such. So do you want to move on and get into some spoilers for this?
Yeah, spoilers is good. Let's talk about spoilers.
All right, guys, full spoilers for Thor Ragnarok. So I think the first thing that stands out for me that I want to touch on is I think the marketing actually did a really brilliant job with this movie. And you mentioned earlier that every bit of the marketing material that came out, I think, kind of got us increasingly hyped for the movie. And that's obviously a credit to the movie being good. And so marketing have a lot of good things to work with and tying it together in a way that, didn't really spoil us on a whole lot of things. And that's kind of where I would like to give the marketing team a lot of credit, is they concealed quite a bit. And a lot of it was in plain sight, too. So I know by the end of the movie, Thor gets his eye slashed out by Hela. I didn't see that coming, and there's actually there's a little bit of the sequence in the trailer that we see. It's probably the big shot that happens, I think, before the title card of Thor jumping down on the Bifrost with full God of Thunder mode with electricity kind of flowing through him, and he's got his eyes are just fully electric, and his eyes, his plural eyes, and that shot is in the movie, but he's got one of his eyes just totally gouged out, blood running down. I was just like, oh shit. Okay, that was something that happened that the trailers kind of showed us, but they misled us in that regard. But I think even more so than that was the way that Ragnarok played a role in this movie. That totally caught me off guard. I mean, the movie's called Ragnarok. Yeah, I get it, but I think every time you think about a prophecy in a movie, like, oh, the prophecy says this. Well, the whole thing's about they've got to stop the prophecy from happening, right? And this movie's no different in that regard, in the sense that Thor, for certainly the opening of the movie and for a good amount of the movie, is, we've got to prevent Ragnarok from happening. But by the end of the movie, it's very interesting. I mean, Hela basically gets established as a villain that is too powerful for even Thor in full God of Thunder mode to defeat. So he just kind of says, fuck it, and says, the only way to defeat Hela is to literally bring an end to all things in Asgard. So he brings about Surtur, who, is the destroyer of Asgard, as it turns out, is the prophesized destroyer of Asgard. And Surtur literally lays waste to all of Asgard, and the whole damn realm literally explodes before our eyes. And again, if you look at, I think the teaser, and I think maybe the trailer as well, there are the shots that we see of Asgard being blown to bits. So we knew that was going to happen, but the way that the trailer, the way that the trailers really framed that is that we just kind of thought it was Hela doing that maybe early in the movie, and the way that certainly a lot of that played out totally caught me by surprise, even though we had kind of seen some of it. And I like when marketing doesn't tell me everything.
Well, it blew my mind. I fell asleep the first time, and then the second time I was wide open, and it was just incredible. It's incredible. The sequence, the lightning effects of the visual effects of Thor becoming the lightning god, or the god of thunder, I guess is what he's called, or the Lord of Thunder.
That seductive Lord of Thunder has made off with my champion.
Everything about it's incredible. I fell asleep during the third act of the first time I saw it. And you made a point to tell me, listen, you missed the best part of the whole movie. And so I went back and I saw it, and I missed the best part of the movie by far. Because there's the whole scene of Thor on the Bifrost is just incredible. He comes back and just kicks so much ass. And just the visual effects of the lightning is incredible. I think it accentuates so much of the character that I don't think we've ever seen in Thor. And it makes him the God of Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, that whole sequence is something that gives you chills. Like, it's so awe-inspiring. And visually, of course, it's astounding. But pair it off with Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song.
Yeah, and you never hear that song in movies, yeah.
Girl with the Dragon Tattoo disagrees, but yes. Not the Zeppelin version, I will to be fair, but...
It's a great song, but how many movies can you actually think of that have it in it? It was in, School of Rock, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Thor. 3 movies. They're super particular about the movies they lend that song out to.
It's possible, but regardless.
Anyways, yeah.
That's not the point.
The point is, it's an incredible sequence.
It's just, it's sublime to watch that sequence. And there's just a lot of really cool shit that happens in this movie. Well, there's just little things like Doctor Strange showing up, and he doesn't really contribute a whole lot in terms of plot.
He's just a badass the whole time he's in it.
He is I guess since we've gotten the origin story of Doctor Strange out of the way, and it's been, I guess, a year or so in the timeline, or the timeline's whatever, doesn't really matter. Either way, he's clearly been brushing up on them books.
Yeah, he don't give a fuck. He just does whatever the fuck he wants. Loki, the god of mischief, is fucking falling for 30 minutes.
Been falling for 30 minutes.
And then he pushes them out of his building, and he doesn't give a fuck. They're gone. He when I went to go watch the Doctor Strange movie, I expected him to be, and maybe I was wrong because it's a introduction to Doctor Strange, but I expected him to be a badass with magic. I didn't get that really in the first movie, but I got that in this.
I absolutely agree. Kind of Doctor Strange in his own movie basically could make shields and whips. It was kind of limited in terms of what he could do. I guess once he got the Time Stone, he was pretty OP, but that was kind of cheating.
I really hope he kicks ass in Infinity War. I hope he's the reason why the Avengers end up winning. You know what I mean? I don't know. I really like Doctor Strange. He's a super powerful character, and I don't think that we've seen the full potential of that character. We saw a portion of it in this movie where he just, okay, you're gone, whatever.
Yeah, he was doing largely inconsequential things. He wasn't trying to fight off, the biggest, baddest of villains or anything in this, but, we saw hints of him just doing a lot more magic-y type things than we saw within his own movie. So yeah, I would have to think that you can't really regress from that. I feel like you got to keep it going in that direction and make him into even more of a badass. So yeah, it's fun seeing him here. And we got some other fun kind of cameos and references in this that were pretty awesome. The Asgardian play that Loki Odin is attending towards the beginning had some pretty fun names involved. Matt Damon showing up to play Loki, Luke Hemsworth, brother of Chris Hemsworth, to play Thor, and Sam Neill, also a Jurassic Park alum, showing up as Odin So it's fun seeing some names like that. This has been in the trailer, so it's kind of been out and there a while. But people have always been kind of pushing for Beta Ray Bill to make an appearance. For those unaware, he's basically the horse-faced version of Thor. He's a pretty cool dude. But Thor isn't always Thor. Sometimes Thor can be passed by those worthy to pick up Mjolnir. Traditionally in the comics, Hela obviously is able to pick up Mjolnir in the movie, and she doesn't start transforming into Thor. That's just kind of part of the lore that they established for Hela's backstory within this as the firstborn of Odin. But we saw a hint of Beta Ray Bill, Man-Thing, Bi-Beast, and Ares on the tower in Sakaar as previous Contest of Champions winners. So it's fun to see kind of the world build like that. Just little things like that basically cement the fact that these characters exist within the MCU. Whether or not we ever see them in any sort of extended role, maybe not. But we saw like fucking Howard the Duck and Guardians 1 and 2. Like, Howard the Duck is in the same universe as Frank motherfucking Castle, the Punisher. Like, what a world, And I love that. I love that it's so weird like that. I mean, sure, those characters aren't going to share the screen at any point, but, technically, if you want to, when it boils down to it, they are part of the same universe, and that's a hell of a thing, I feel. So it's fun. I like seeing little things like that, fun Easter eggs and things along those lines. Like, it's just super cool to kind of build the world out like that. And I thought Sakaar was actually probably my favorite bit in the movie. So it kind of splits between the A and the B plots in terms of, Thor is off on Sakaar, fighting the Hulk and basically trying to get back to Asgard. And so there's a separate storyline in Asgard where Hela has taken over and, is becoming the new queen of Asgard. So, we follow Thor, on his quest to basically get back to Asgard to rebel against Hela's new reign of terror. But I thought the setting of Sakaar was just super interesting, and the fucking soundtrack when they're on there, like, it's got this very, very retro 80s synth-inspired score, which totally makes sense. It's Mark Mothersbaugh, who is the founding member of Devo, that did the score.
Oh, really?
So, clearly someone that is intimately familiar with that, but just the feel of it, and we get the fucking Willy Wonka music.
Fuck yeah, dude. The whole callback to fucking Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was incredible.
There's just lots of little touches in that, and then I think Sakaar is kind of where the colors particularly are so extravagant. I mean, Grandmaster is wearing this very ridiculous getup.
Yeah, he's got like that blue stripe going down his lip.
Yeah, I mean, just visually speaking, like, and I think I saw Taika basically said that a lot of the design for Sakaar was very Kirby influenced, very Jack Kirby influenced in terms of a lot of the shapes and stuff, and like for like the walls and the background design, like he pulled that like almost one for one from a lot of the old comic books of Thor, and you can really see that, and it's just such a cool thing to be adapted at that style to kind of see that brought into life. And I think just the story elements there, I think, were probably the most interesting plot beats for me. That's where we meet Korg, who's fantastic. Meek, can't forget about Meek. Meek also is great. He's got blades for hands. It's pretty cool.
And he lays eggs.
Yeah, well, it might be eggs. Who knows? Who's to say? But we get like, just the fucking fight between Thor and Hulk. Like, that was a fucking amazing sequence. And then the resolution, or I guess the sort of resolution of it, is also pretty fantastic. Where Thor attempts to do the Black Widow lullaby on the Hulk.
It's pretty great.
I mean, that's a great through line from the Avengers, first of all. But oh my god, it's just an amazing, funny sequence. And when he continues that, even later on when Hulk does revert back to banner, he says, "The sun's getting real low. Sun's real low." Stop saying that. Why do you keep saying that?
Tony wears his pants really fucking tight, man. Okay? That's why I keep grabbing my crotch. He wears his pants really tight.
Yeah, it's got kind of a joke a minute, but I think that, again, I didn't feel like it got bogged down by the humor. It just felt like everyone was just having a fucking blast, and so by extension, we were having a blast watching them have a blast. It was just a blast extravaganza, man.
That Willy Wonka callback, though, man, it blew my mind the first time I saw it. Like, I was half asleep, but I caught that shit immediately. And I mean, it's a straight callback to where they're running through the boat going through the tunnel, and he starts screaming, and then boom, it's over. I don't know why they called back to that, but it's just a very clever use of material.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we could go on and on. I think we've earned our Marvel paychecks certainly for the week, though. So yeah, I mean, I guess kind of just last minute thoughts before we move on. I would say other things that stood out to me. I guess probably if I had to kind of point to one thing that I was kind of just like, oh, I don't know if I'm a big fan of that, is the Warriors 3 got done dirty. I mean, within 5-10 seconds of meeting them, Hela just immediately kills 2 out of the 3, and at least Hogan gets a little bit of a last stand to make against her. But I kind of felt like I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it was just kind of like, hey, here's these characters from the first 2 movies. Yeah, fuck those movies. We don't really care about those anymore. We'll just get rid of all these characters. We've got these new cast of characters that are way more interesting, way more fun to play with. Let's bring those guys in and get these guys out of the way. And I kind of felt like, well, I feel like if you let Taika play with these characters, I think they could have been really cool, but they clearly decided to move in a different direction with those guys. So that was just one of those things, especially coming off watching, the previous Thor movies where they have a decent sized role. It kind of just felt like, damn, like I don't even think Thor mentioned that they died. Like that kind of seems like a weird thing to get around. But I mean, I guess Heimdall survived, so that was cool. Idris Elba had a little bit more to do, which was nice. And I would be remiss to say if I didn't mention the brief flashback that we got when Loki and Valkyrie are kind of sparring with each other. We see the brief flashback of kind of the fall of Valkyrie at the hands of Hela, and that is the most stunningly gorgeous thing. Like, I literally want a painting of that on my wall, and if I can find one, I will acquire one and put it on my wall, believe me.
You might have to pay for that painting. It might be expensive. It's a very exquisite thing. It's very beautiful. I've been looking for that for a desktop. I just want it as a desktop. I don't even need it as a painting.
No, I need the painting. I mean, desktop would be, a short-term solution, but I need a long-term solution.
With the fucking, I guess Pegasi is the right word. Is that the right word?
Sounds like the plural version of it, sure.
Yeah, the fucking Pegasi and the Valkyries. It's so beautiful. And
even just the way that Hela looks with the shading and her headdress and everything, like it's just the way it's composed. I mean, it looks like a painting as it is.
It's true. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to give it a quick shout out because I've inevitably forgot something that I wanted to talk about, and I'll remember it a couple days after we record this. But that is one thing that I definitely wanted to make sure that I mentioned because I loved it, and I love the movie, and that's kind of where I fall on it. I got to say that I would recommend you guys see this in theaters. Andrew, how do you feel?
100%, no doubt about it. The soundtrack, the visuals, the comedic writing, it's very much something that can leverage the full screen effect of a theater. I think it's something that you could definitely write home about if you go see it in the theater. I think it's very good, very well made movie.
All right, that's Thor Ragnarok, folks. Go see it in theaters right now, or see it again if you already saw it. Marvel and Disney definitely need the money, so
they're hurting.
Yeah, they're hurting. They really are. All right, man. This is the part where you tell me what you did this past week.
Well, I can tell you what I did last week. I watched a I watched a couple of different things, if I remember right. The biggest thing that I can write home about from last week is The Devil's Candy. I caught it on Netflix. Artistically, it's a very well-made movie. It's probably, I would say that it's probably one of my favorite horror movies that I've watched in a long time, and that goes with It. It's right up there with It. I don't know. It's very different, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Other than that, I played a little bit of Castlevania on the Super Nintendo. What else have I done? I don't think I've done much else. that's all I've got. What have you been up to this week?
Well, I myself have not done a whole lot outside of seeing Thor a couple times, but I did want to recommend a couple movies that I have seen, not anything I've seen in the past week, but generally speaking that I have seen, and I wanted to recommend them because they're both directed by Taika Waititi. So I think if you enjoyed Thor Ragnarok, if you enjoyed that style of humor, then you owe it to yourself to watch probably any of Taika Waititi's past movies. I haven't seen all the movies that he's done, but the two that I've seen that I wanted to highlight are first of all, What We Do in the Shadows, which I know you have seen, and it's a hilarious movie. It's basically a mockumentary of three vampires living in New Zealand, and it's hilarious. It's much more of a straight comedy than certainly like something like Ragnarok is, but it's got that same style of wit and humor that it's just amazing to watch. And the second one is a movie that he did prior to Thor Ragnarok, which is Hunt for the Wilderpeople. And it has that humor, but I think it also is it leans a little bit more with the dramatic elements as well. And there's just so much heart to that movie that it's just an astounding film. One that I think I saw last year when it came out, and blew me away. It's got Sam Neill in it, who I mentioned earlier, Jurassic Park, and Julian Dennison plays like a teenager, like a troubled teenager in it, and he's fantastic, and he's hilarious as well. I don't want to get too in depth with them, but I think if you enjoyed Ragnarok, I think that's definitely something. Those are two movies I think in particular that are worth adding to your list of movies to catch when you can. Just great humor and lots of heart to both of those movies. But things that I have been doing this past week, I have proven you wrong, sir. I have started Super Mario Odyssey. Oh,
impressive. I have been playing quite a bit of that. I guess I didn't mention that.
Well, you talked about it last week, so that's fair. But, I haven't played a whole lot. I imagine you've probably gotten a bit further than I have in it. But I've put enough time in it to get a good feel for the game and kind of a sense of how I think I'm going to like it, which is to say that I'm really going to like it. It kind of evokes that same feeling for me that I think Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild did, where kind of within a few minutes of picking it up, it just feels so good in your hands. Just the controls, everything just feels very intuitive. It feels very natural. And, it's a Mario game. Like Nintendo doesn't often fuck around when it comes to their first-party titles, and this is no exception. It seems like a really well-put-together package, and I'm excited to explore kind of some very different worlds within it. So I've only explored, I guess, the first couple kingdoms that you run through, the Cap Kingdom and then the Cascade Kingdom with like dinosaurs and stuff in it, and it's a beautiful game. And it feels really good, and I have a feeling that it's going to be something special. So
you've got a lot to see, dude. It's so fucking good.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to kind of dive a little bit deeper, hopefully over this next week or so. But I anticipated something that I'll be playing for quite a while. Hopefully I finish it. I'm not very good at finishing games, honestly, but that's just because I spread myself too thin sometimes, and when you're trying to watch tons of movies, tons of TV shows, play video games, read comic books.
It's too much shit, I understand.
Things inevitably fall by the wayside, but I think this is something that I think will be hanging out in the cartridge slot on my old Switch for a good amount of time. So it's really good. That's really it for me. Yeah, I mean, I watched, like I said, the Marvel movies leading up to Thor, but I don't really need to add anything on those. I don't really need to watch them before you watch Ragnarok. I think Ragnarok's pretty standalone. I know you didn't rewatch, I don't think, any of them, but
no, I didn't.
I mean, did you really feel lost in any way?
No, definitely not.
Yeah, I think it does a good job of kind of soft resetting, I think, the Thor universe, and certainly the best Thor movie of the three. I think that goes without saying.
Definitely.
And definitely the best depiction of Thor as a character as well. So that's really it for me. So to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. You can check us out at watchreviewrepeat.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, the Gmail, all of those sorts of things, and send us an electronic mail if you happen to have a computer. Our intro and outro track is Mechanolith by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. And that's really about it for us. Next week, we're going to be talking Kenneth Branagh's Murder on the Orient Express, starring many, many talented folks, including Daisy Ridley.
Yes. Wait, that sounded a little creepy. I'm sorry. I apologize about that.
Yes, Daisy Ridley. It's normal. It's totally normal, guys. Don't worry about it. Should I keep that in the final edit?
No, don't keep that in the final edit, please. Take that out. She'll listen to me and she'll think I was a creep. She'll never talk to me. Oh, God.
But I feel like I have to keep it now.
Oh, fuck. Anyways, everybody listening, have a good night. We'll see you next week.